In the previous assignment, there was a scenario in which Marilyn was selling t-shirts for $15, and we were figuring out things about that situation. This assignment continues our study of Marilyn's t-shirt business, but Marilyn's mom came up with an idea that they're going to keep selling shirts for $15, but they're going to give away 15 shirts as kind of a promotional activity. So the graph from last lesson is the blue graph. The function is called E. So the blue graph's function is E of t equals 15 times t. This situation that's in pink here, where they're giving away 3 t-shirts and a raffle, is shown in the pink graph called G. So this says G of t. So t is our input, and when we put our input number of t-shirts here, we're going to get an output. All right, so now look at these two graphs. The question first is, what do you notice? Specifically for A, you're looking at how do the graphs show the selling price per t-shirt remains the same. So the blue graph, the shirts are 15. The pink graph, the shirts are 15. How can you tell, looking at the graph, that the t-shirt price remains the same? To answer that question, you may want to just go to Desmos and do a little bit of an experiment. If you change certain things about the equation and keep other things the same, you'll notice something about the graphs. So this red graph shows the graph of the function -3 times x plus 5. Look what happens when we graph the second function, y equals -3 times x. What do you notice about this graph and this graph? And then do it again. Here's a third graph, y equals -3 times x minus 2. When that graph shows up, how can you tell that there's something the same about these 3 graphs? What's similar about the functions or the equations? And what is the same about these graphs that you can see? And keep in mind that for A, you mark as many answers as are true. So when you're going over these 4 choices, you may have 1, 2, 3, or 4 answers. Mark the ones that are true. Now let's look at the second question. Determine and interpret the meaning of y equals g of 0 in terms of the graph and this scenario. Label the point on the graph. So, and there's a little bit of a hint here. What point on the graph represents y equals g of 0? And then what is the value of y when t equals 0? So let's go up to the graph and see what's happening when t equals 0, because that is when this situation is happening. When t, our input, equals 0. So go up to the graph, and we're looking at the pink graph. So what's happening when t, that's our input, equals 0? So that's all, it's right here. When our input is 0, what's happening on the pink graph? So we're not on the pink graph yet, so we need to go find the pink graph, but we want to stay where t equals 0. Right here. So it's somewhere between -40 and -50 where this line crosses the y-axis. That's interesting. Let's go back to the answer choices. So we're going to label that point on the graph. So you're going to label the point where our input is 0 and you're on the pink graph, somewhere between -40 and -50. And you're also, go ahead and put that point here. So put your number and a comma and another number to write that point. Then explain what that point means in this scenario about t-shirt sales and money earned. So which of these is true? Because of the 3 giveaway shirts, before selling any shirts, Marilyn's earnings are -45. And your second choice is because of the 45 giveaway shirts, Marilyn's earnings are 0. So which one of those explanations makes sense here and also makes sense with the situation when Marilyn is giving away 3 shirts in a raffle? So make your choice there. And then going down to C, determine and interpret the meaning of g of t equals 0 in terms of the graph and this scenario. Label the point on the graph. So we're looking for the value, the hint is, what is the value of t when g of t equals 0, which is also what we were calling y before, when y equals 0. So look at where y is 0. Y means the same thing of g of t. Look for when y is 0, and then let's see what t equals there. So going back up to the graph, y is 0 all along here. This whole x-axis is when y is 0. So go to where y is 0 and find the intersection with the pink graph, right here. So your question is, what does t equal right here at this point? And remember, t is our input, so t and x mean the same thing in this situation. So what's the value of t or x right here? And that is the number you're going to put here, but you're going to put it as a point, okay? So when y was 0, what was x? Or when g of t is 0, what was your t? Just like up here in B, we said when t is 0, you put in a number for g of t. So here you're filling in the output value when t equals 0, and here you're filling in the input value when g of t equals 0. And then you're going to analyze what this means in the scenario. Does it mean that there's an error in the graph? Selling 3 shirts should make the income be $45? Or is the correct option that selling 3 t-shirts brings in $45, but because of the 3-shirt giveaway, earnings at this point is 0? So you decide which description is best in this situation.